I should have known something was wrong when Brian's mother, Chloe, insisted on planning our entire wedding without asking me a single question about what I wanted. But I was young, in love, and foolish enough to believe that being accommodating would earn their respect. My name is Ella, and I married into the Crawford family 3 years ago. From the outside, they looked perfect, wealthy, successful, the kind of family that appeared in local magazine features about philanthropic dynasties. Brian was charming during our courtship, his brother Jason was friendly enough, and even their father Peter seemed welcoming. But the moment that wedding ring slipped onto my finger, everything changed. The morning after our honeymoon, Chloe showed up at our apartment unannounced. She walked past me without a greeting and began opening our kitchen cabinets, her nose wrinkled in disapproval. "Ella, darling," she said, with a smile that never reached her eyes, "we need to discuss how you'll be managing household duties. The Crawford men have certain standards." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Within weeks, every family dinner became my responsibility. Every holiday gathering, every business event, every impromptu visit meant hours of cooking, cleaning, and serving while being treated like hired help rather than family. And Brian, my beloved husband, said nothing. He would just kiss my forehead and whisper, "You're doing great, honey. Mom's just particular." 2 years into my marriage, I had become a ghost in my own life. I'd quit my job as a graphic designer at Chloe's insistence that Crawford wives don't work. I spent my days preparing elaborate meals, maintaining a spotless home, and running errands for the entire Crawford clan. Chloe would call at 7 in the morning demanding I pick up her dry cleaning. Jason would show up with his laundry, expecting it done by evening. Peter would arrive for dinner without notice, then complain if his favorite dish wasn't available. The worst part wasn't the work, it was the invisibility. They would discuss business, politics, and family matters as if I wasn't in the room. When I tried to contribute to conversations, they would smile politely and change the subject. I was useful, but not valued, present, but never seen. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was organizing the mail when I noticed an envelope addressed to me, marked private and confidential, from a law firm I didn't recognize, Morrison and Associates. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter from a lawyer named Collins Morrison requesting I contact him regarding a matter of significant importance concerning your family lineage and inheritance rights. There was a phone number and a request for utmost discretion. I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the lunch dishes I'd been washing and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, curiosity about my own life. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 19, shortly before I met Brian. I had no siblings, no extended family that I knew of. What could this possibly be about? I called Collins Morrison from my car the next morning, parked in a grocery store lot where no one would see me. His voice was professional but warm. "Mrs. Crawford, thank you for calling. I understand this must be confusing. I've been trying to locate you for 6 months. It concerns your late grandmother, Eleanor Hartfield. Did you know her?" My breath caught. "I thought she died before I was born. My mother never spoke about her." "There's a great deal you don't know, Mrs. Crawford. Can you meet me tomorrow at 2? Come alone. What I have to share will change your life." I agreed, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something just for myself. Collins Morrison's office was elegant but understated. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, with kind eyes that reminded me of my father. He slid a folder across his desk toward me. "Your grandmother, Eleanor Hartfield, was one of the wealthiest women in the state. She made her fortune in real estate development. When your mother had a falling out with the family over marrying your father, Eleanor was heartbroken, but never stopped loving her daughter or you." I stared at him, unable to process the words. Eleanor passed away 18 months ago. She left specific instructions in her will. Her entire estate, valued at approximately $47 million, goes to you. The only condition was that we find you and ensure you were in a position to manage it wisely. I've been conducting a discreet investigation to understand your circumstances before making contact." The room spun. $47 million? I had been scrubbing floors and being treated like a servant while I was a multimillionaire. "What kind of investigation?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Colin's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Crawford, I needed to ensure you weren't being exploited or controlled. What I discovered troubled me deeply. Your marriage, your treatment by the Crawford family, your complete isolation from any financial independence. Before I release these funds, I need to know, are you safe? Are you there by choice?" Tears I'd been holding back for years suddenly poured down my face. This stranger saw me, truly saw me, in a way my own husband never had. "I don't know anymore," I admitted. "I thought I was being a good wife, but I feel like I've disappeared." Collins nodded slowly. "Then let me help you figure out what you want to do next. But Ella, understand this. The moment you claim this inheritance, your life will change. You'll have power. The question is, what will you do with it?" Over the next 2 weeks, I met with Collins 3 more times, always in secret, always careful to maintain my normal routine at home. He introduced me to a financial advisor named Scarlett Chen, a sharp woman in her 40s, who would help me understand and manage my new wealth. "First," Scarlett said during our initial meeting, "we need to establish your independence, separate bank accounts, credit cards in your name only, and legal documentation that protects your assets. Then we plan." "Plan for what?" I asked. "For whatever you want. Divorce, confrontation, a complete life restart. But let me give you some advice. People who've treated you poorly don't suddenly develop respect. They respond to power. Right now, they have it all. Soon, you will. How you use that power will define your next chapter." I thought about every humiliation, every dismissal, every moment I'd felt invisible. Something cold and determined settled in my chest. "I want them to understand what they lost," I said quietly. "I want them to see me." Scarlett smiled. "Then let's make sure they can't look away." Before we could finalize the inheritance transfer, Collins called me with urgency in his voice. "Ella, as part of the estate settlement, we need to conduct a DNA verification. It's standard for inheritances of this size. However, our preliminary research uncovered something concerning the Crawford family. I need you to authorize an extended DNA panel. I can't explain why yet, but trust me." I agreed, confused but trusting Colin's judgment. I went to a private medical facility that Scarlett arranged, gave my samples, and waited. The results would take 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I continued my role as the Crawford family maid, but everything felt different. I moved through their demands like an actress playing a part, knowing my final scene was approaching. When Chloe snapped her fingers at me to refill her wine glass during a dinner party, I smiled and obliged, thinking about what was coming. 3 weeks after my first meeting with Collins, he called me with news that made my blood run cold. "Ella, you need to sit down. The DNA results revealed something extraordinary. You're not just Eleanor Hartfield's granddaughter. You're also related to the Crawford family through Peter Crawford's bloodline. Your mother and Peter shared a father. Ella, Peter Crawford is your uncle." The room tilted. "What?" "Your grandfather had an affair before he married Eleanor. Peter Crawford is the result of that affair. He was raised by his mother and stepfather, but knew about his biological father. He knew about your mother, his half-sister. Ella, he's known who you are this entire time." The implications crashed over me like a wave. Peter Crawford, who watched me be treated like a servant, who sat at dinners I cooked and never said a word, who called me girl instead of my name, knew I was his niece. He knew, and he let it happen anyway. I sat in my car outside a park, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd experienced. Peter Crawford had married his own niece to his son. He'd orchestrated my isolation, my degradation, all while knowing exactly who I was. But why? Collins had the answer when I called him back. Your grandmother's will had a provision. If any of her biological descendants were found to be mistreating you or acting against your interests, they would be explicitly excluded from any potential claims on the estate. Peter Crawford knew about the will. He's been in contact with Eleanor's lawyers for years, trying to contest it, claiming he should inherit as her stepson. When he discovered you existed, he saw a threat to his potential claim. So he had Brian marry me, I said slowly, the pieces falling into place, to control me, to make sure I never found out about the inheritance. That's our theory. And Ella, there's more. The Crawford family business is failing. They're mortgaged to the hilt, living on credit and reputation. They need money desperately. My guess is Peter thought if he could keep you under his control, ignorant and dependent, he could eventually manipulate you into signing over the inheritance or sharing it. The rage that filled me was cold and precise. They hadn't just treated me poorly, they had conspired to steal my identity, my inheritance, and my life. That night, I sat with Scarlett and Collins in their office until midnight, planning every detail of what came next. The DNA test results are legally documented. We have proof of Peter's knowledge and his relationship to you. We also have documented evidence of his attempts to contest the will and his communications with our office under false pretenses. Scarlett pulled up financial records on her laptop. The Crawford family is 3 months away from bankruptcy. Their house is mortgaged, Jason's business is failing, and Brian's trust fund was liquidated last year to cover debts. They're desperate. Good, I said, surprising myself with the hardness in my voice. I want to acquire their debts, all of them. I want to own every loan, every mortgage, every credit line. Can we do that? Scarlett's smile was predatory. With $47 million, easily, we can have it done in 2 weeks. Then do it, and I want documentation of every time Peter Crawford communicated with lawyers about me, about the will, about anything. I want proof of his knowledge and his intentions. And I want one more thing. I paused, gathering my courage. I want to DNA test Brian. The results came back faster than I expected. Collins delivered them in person, his face grave. Ella, I'm so sorry. Brian Crawford is not Peter's biological son. According to the DNA analysis, he's not related to any of the Crawfords by blood. I closed my eyes, not even surprised anymore. Chloe had an affair. It appears so, but here's what's interesting. Peter knows. We found emails between Peter and Chloe from 15 years ago discussing Brian's paternity and agreeing to keep it quiet for the sake of appearances and Peter's business reputation. So nothing about this family is real, I whispered. It's all lies built on lies. Yes, but Ella, you're real. Your inheritance is real. Your grandmother's love for you was real, even if you never knew her. The question now is, what do you want to do with the truth? I looked up at him, and I knew my answer. I want to dismantle everything they've built on lies. I want them to face consequences for every manipulation, every cruelty, every calculated degradation, and I want them to know that I'm the one doing it. Over the next 3 weeks, Scarlett worked magic. Using shell corporations and third-party brokers, we quietly purchased every significant debt the Crawford family held: their mortgage, Jason's business loans, the credit lines they'd been using to maintain their lifestyle. We even bought Peter's outstanding gambling debts, something Collins had discovered during his investigation. By mid-April, I owned them. They just didn't know it yet. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly. I cooked, cleaned, and smiled. When Chloe demanded I organize Jason's birthday party, I agreed sweetly and planned an event more elaborate than anything I'd done before. It would be the perfect stage for my final performance as their servant. Brian sensed something different about me. "You seem happy lately," he said one night, actually looking at me for the first time in months.
"I am," I said, honestly. "I feel like I'm finally becoming who I'm supposed to be." He smiled and kissed my forehead, never imagining what those words really meant. Jason's birthday party was scheduled for the last Saturday in April at the Crawford family mansion. Chloe had invited over 100 people, business associates, society friends, local politicians. It was meant to be a display of Crawford power and prestige. I spent 3 days preparing, coordinating caterers, arranging flowers, ensuring every detail was perfect. Chloe supervised me like a prison warden, criticizing everything while her friends watched and whispered. I smiled through it all. What they didn't know was that I'd invited 3 additional guests: Collins Morrison, Scarlett Chen, and a process server named Robert, whom Collins had hired for the evening. They would arrive at precisely 8 o'clock, after dinner but before the evening's festivities concluded. I also prepared envelopes, 5 of them. Each contained documents that would destroy the lies the Crawford family had built their lives upon. These envelopes were secured with Scarlett, waiting for my signal. The party began at 6. I worked seamlessly, ensuring drinks stayed filled and plates never empty, invisible as always. Peter held court with his business associates, discussing deals I knew he couldn't afford. Chloe played the society matriarch, dripping in jewelry bought on credit she couldn't repay. Jason and his wife acted like young royalty. And Brian, my husband, laughed with his friends, never once checking if I needed help or even acknowledging my presence. At 7:45, I changed out of my apron and into a dress I'd kept hidden. Elegant, expensive, the deep green that always made my eyes look striking. I styled my hair, applied makeup carefully, and walked back into that party looking like someone they'd never seen before. The conversations actually paused when I entered the room. Chloe's eyes narrowed. "Ella, what are you doing? There's work to be done." "No," I said, clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "There isn't." Before anyone could respond, Collins Morrison entered through the front door, followed by Scarlett and Robert. Their presence was commanding, official, and completely unexpected. "Good evening," Collins said, his voice professional and cool. "I apologize for the interruption, but I'm here on legal business that cannot wait. I'm Collins Morrison, attorney at law. I'm looking for Mr. Peter Crawford, Mrs. Chloe Crawford, Mr. Brian Crawford, and Mr. Jason Crawford." Peter stepped forward, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. "This is a private party. Whatever business you have can wait until Monday." "I'm afraid it cannot," Collins replied. "I'm here regarding the estate of Eleanor Hartfield and related matters concerning fraud, financial misconduct, and conspiracy." You could have heard a pin drop. Every eye in the room was fixed on Collins, then on the Crawfords, then on me. "These matters concern your family and Mrs. Ella Crawford. Perhaps we should speak privately." "No," I said, stepping forward. "Everyone here should know the truth. They've watched this family treat me like a servant for years. They should understand why." Chloe's face had gone pale. Peter's jaw was clenched. Brian looked between me and the lawyers, confused and afraid. 3 months ago, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart, I discovered that my grandmother, whom I never knew, left me an inheritance, $47 million. Gasps echoed through the room. Peter's face went from pale to purple. But the interesting thing about this inheritance is what I learned while claiming it. I learned that Peter Crawford is my uncle. His father and my mother were half-siblings. Peter knew exactly who I was when Brian started dating me. He orchestrated our entire relationship. Brian staggered back as if I'd struck him. "What? That's impossible. Dad, tell her that's crazy." But Peter said nothing, his silence confirming everything. Peter wanted to control my inheritance. He needed me close, dependent, and ignorant. So he had his son marry me, and then this family spent 3 years ensuring I had no identity, no power, no voice. You made me a maid in my own life because you were planning to steal everything I had. Scarlett stepped forward with her briefcase. We have documentation of everything. Emails between Peter Crawford and various lawyers attempting to contest Eleanor Hartfield's will, communications proving his knowledge of Ella's identity, records of his attempts to locate her before she met Brian, and genetic proof of his relationship to both Ella and Eleanor. She began distributing copies to the stunned guests. Business partners started reading, their expressions darkening as they realized the extent of the deception. "But that's not all," I said, my voice growing stronger. "We also have proof that Brian Crawford is not Peter's biological son. Chloe had an affair, and both she and Peter have known about Brian's true paternity for 15 years. Brian's face crumbled. He turned to his mother, his father, seeking denial. Neither could meet his eyes. "You lied about everything," he whispered. "My entire life is a lie. Your entire life is built on using people, just like you used me." Robert, the process server, stepped forward. "I have documents for Mr. Peter Crawford, Mrs. Chloe Crawford, and Mr. Jason Crawford." He handed them each a thick envelope. They opened them with shaking hands. "Those are notices of debt collection," Scarlett explained to the room. "Over the past month, Mrs. Ella Crawford, through various corporate entities, has acquired all outstanding Crawford family debts, the mortgage on this house, Mr. Jason's business loans, and several significant personal credit lines. The total amount owed is approximately $8.3 million. Payment in full is due within 30 days, or Mrs. Crawford will exercise her legal right to seize all collateral, including this property." The room erupted. Business partners started backing away from the Crawfords. Society friends exchanged horrified glances. Several people actually started applauding me. Peter found his voice roaring with rage. "You vindictive little—" "Careful," Collins warned. "There are witnesses here, and anything you say can be used against you in court. Mrs. Crawford has grounds for multiple lawsuits, including fraud, emotional abuse, and financial exploitation. I'd suggest you think very carefully about your next words." Brian grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Ella, we can fix this. We can work it out. I love you." I looked at his hand on my arm, then into his eyes. "You never loved me. You don't even know me. Tell me, Brian, what's my favorite color?" He blinked, confused. "What does that matter?" "What's my favorite book? What did I study in college? What was my mother's name? When is my birthday?" Each question landed like a blow. He couldn't answer any of them. "You married a fantasy, a prop to make your life work," I said, pulling my arm free. "You never once asked me about myself, my dreams, my thoughts. For 3 years, I've been invisible to you. Now you see me, but only because I have something you want." "So this is about revenge?" he spat. "You're going to destroy my family over hurt feelings?" "No," I said quietly. "This is about justice. You and your family conspired to steal my identity and my inheritance. You treated me as subhuman. You deserve every consequence coming your way." Chloe tried a different approach. She grabbed my hands, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "Ella, sweetheart, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We've always cared about you. Your family." I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "Family? You called me at 7 in the morning to pick up your dry cleaning. You made me serve dinner parties and clean up afterward while you entertained. You never once asked me how I was, what I wanted, or if I was happy. You treated me like hired help at best and a trained animal at worst." "We were teaching you to be a Crawford wife," she insisted. "No, you were teaching me to be nothing, to want nothing, to be so small and grateful that I'd never question why I had no access to bank accounts, no say in my own life, no identity beyond serving you." I stepped back from her. It didn't work. Scarlett handed Chloe another envelope. "Mrs. Crawford, these are divorce papers. Ella is filing on grounds of fraud, as Brian entered into the marriage under false pretenses orchestrated by your family. Given the circumstances and documentation we have, we expect an uncontested proceeding with no alimony and no community property claims." Jason had been silent through everything, staring at the debt collection notice. Finally, he looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never expected: genuine remorse. "I knew. Not all of it, but I knew Dad wanted you in the family for some reason beyond love. I watched him push Brian toward you, watched him manipulate situations to keep you isolated, and I said nothing. I'm sorry, Ella. I'm genuinely sorry." It was the first real thing any of them had said to me. "Your apology doesn't fix anything, but I appreciate the honesty. Jason, you have 30 days to pay your debts. I suggest you start selling assets and making plans." He nodded, defeated. "What happens to us after this?" "That's up to you. You can try to rebuild with honesty, or you can continue living lies until everything collapses. But you won't be doing it with my money, my time, or my life." The party dissolved into chaos. Guests fled, business associates cut ties with the Crawfords in real time, and society friends deleted their phone numbers before they even left the driveway. I watched it all with a strange sense of peace. Collins approached me as I stood alone on the mansion's terrace. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said simply. "For the first time in 3 years, I feel free." "What's next for you?" I thought about it. "I'm going to honor my grandmother. I'm going to use this inheritance to build something meaningful. Maybe I'll restart my design career. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll create a foundation to help other women who feel trapped as I did. I don't know yet, but for the first time, the choice is mine." Behind us, I could hear the Crawfords arguing, their carefully constructed world crumbling. Peter was shouting about lawyers, Chloe was sobbing about reputation, Brian was demanding to know how I could do this to him. I felt nothing for them anymore. No anger, no sadness, no attachment. They were strangers who'd stolen 3 years of my life, and I was taking my life back. 6 months later, I stood in the office of my new graphic design studio downtown. The walls were hung with my work, projects I'd created with passion and purpose. I'd hired 3 other designers, all women who'd been underestimated and overlooked in their previous positions. We were building something real. The Crawford family had lost everything. The mansion was sold to cover debts, with some money left over that I'd placed in a trust for Brian, despite everything. Peter and Chloe had moved to a small apartment, their social standing destroyed. Jason had declared bankruptcy, but was slowly rebuilding with honest work. Brian had sent me one letter, which I'd read once and filed away. It was full of apologies and excuses, explanations and justifications. At the end, he'd written, "I think I actually did love you, Ella. I just never learned how to show it." Maybe that was true. Maybe he was capable of love, but had been raised by wolves who taught him all the wrong lessons. It didn't matter now.
I'd used a portion of my inheritance to establish the Eleanor Hartfield Foundation, dedicated to helping women escape controlling relationships and rebuild their independence. Collins served on the board, Scarlett managed the finances, and I poured my heart into making sure no other woman felt as invisible as I had felt. As I looked out my office window at the city below, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize.
Hello? Miss Hartfield? The use of my grandmother's name, which I'd legally reclaimed, made me smile. This is Detective Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating Peter Crawford's activities, and we'd like to speak with you about testifying. Of course, I said. I'll help however I can. Because that was the final piece. Not just escaping, not just surviving, but ensuring that people like Peter Crawford faced real consequences for their actions. Justice wasn't just about my revenge. It was about making sure they couldn't do this to anyone else. I hung up and turned back to my computer, where a new design project waited. But before I started working, I did something I'd made a habit of. I pulled up a photo of my grandmother that Collins had given me. Eleanor Hartfield looked strong, determined, and kind. We'd never met, but her love had saved me anyway. "Thank you," I whispered to her image. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." And then I got back to work, building the life I'd always deserved, finally visible, finally free, finally whole.